mean, yeah.
You know?
One day, I'm just going to replace it. Oh, but now I feel an allegiance to it.
You only just now started to feel an allegiance to it?
Now that it's like it feels like people are rooting against it.
No, like, they aren't.
I don't know. The fact that they make fun of it, I'm like, it must survive. Yeah.
I think they're making fun of us and not it.
Right.
Like, cool plant guys. Way to keep shit alive. Also, I think my mother finds it very funny that people like carefully curate what's going on in their like videos and shit. And she's like, it is hilarious that you have a dead plant in yours and that's never seemed like an issue.
Unless that was carefully curated.
Which I think she knows it wasn't.
Yeah, right. She would. But other people might not.
Yeah, but then like how ominous to have it just like a ghost behind one of the people. It's a bit of a creepy placement. If anything, it should be like right here, don't you think?
Right. So it's like, so the show should be called Between Two Humans.
Between two, yeah. So, are we gonna do the invite option?
Yeah, let's try it. So we're messing around with some things. We're gonna try Instagram living this as well.
Yeah. So, I think we should put the phones over there first.
I think one of us needs to start, and then the other person needs to watch. Is this how it works?
Watch what?
Wait. Because it says users can invite anyone who's currently watching their broadcast to join.
Oh.
Yes. So what I think is like you start your live stream and then I will watch it like for a brief second and then you can invite me.
Okay. We're going to do this. It's going to be great.
It's such a balancing act.
Like literally I'm actually kind of concerned about this now. Is everything going to fall down?
No.
Oh, sorry, that was right into the microphone. Echo me. What? Who is that? That's not who you're supposed to be watching?
You're not live yet.
I'm really stressed out about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty high stakes.
Don't you think?
Yeah. This is make or
break. That looks like my thing.
Probably, right.
So I just hit it?
Yeah. Checking connection. You're now live.
I thought I already was.
Pause.
Ah!
What's wrong with your connection? Oh, dear.
Oh.
I didn't see this coming.
We did not see this coming.
You're now live. Whoa, weird feedback. I'm really sorry, YouTube.
I didn't see this.
This is kind of what I was talking about.
We did not see this
You're
coming.
now live. Whoa, weird feedback. I'm really sorry, YouTube.
I didn't see this. This is kind of what I was
Stop.
talking about.
Stop. How do I stop this?
Live.
Oh my God.
Weird feedback. I'm really sorry, YouTube.
I didn't see this. This is kind of what I was talking about.
Stop. How do I
You're
stop
now
this?
live.
Oh my God.
Weird feedback. I'm really sorry, YouTube.
This is the kind of shit that I meant.
8 people
Great.
saw that.
11 people saw that. Cool. Hey guys. Oh my God, one of them's actually my friend. No, and one of them's my old neighbor. Why was he watching?
How do people do this?
They're not in the same place.
Yes. Okay.
So I wonder if we both need to have headphones on.
What? This is getting so high tech.
Oh, I forgot about these people.
Yeah, they're watching this malfunction.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
no, I don't think that makes sense.
obviously, maybe. Do you think we need to do more research?
Yes, I feel really bad for those 11 people.
Or one person just live streams. Or we do
But again, that's
or
that
we do a fugly like
you're inside panel.
like where we both live stream at the same time.
That's gonna be a cluster.
Where it's just like just on me and just on you.
But that's fine. But
That'll
The
still
same.
it'll still not work. Apparently I don't understand sound.
yeah, because you said you never experienced feedback.
No, but I thought it only malfunctioned when I started watching your feed. Because there was a lag.
Yeah, but that's a result of having two
Right. So if
things going.
I see.
So are you saying you should have turned your sound completely off?
Should I have? What? Oh,
Not like that. Like
no.
the quiet kind.
That's all I know how to do.
That's your friend?
So judgy. That's your friend.
No, I had no thoughts. She seems like she drank a lot of coffee. That's what I was thinking.
I think she's TikToking a lot in her quarantine time. Yep.
So,
Mhm.
are you gonna try it?
I turn my sound off. Okay.
Does
You're
it
gonna
wait?
go
Does this
live.
make sense?
I have no idea. Let's try it.
Oh,
We've already done
shit.
it. Let's just try it.
Delete this video,
Yeah.
please. For the love of God, delete it.
Okay.
Normal? What does that even mean? Do you know that I've never even read what's down there?
What's down there?
Yeah.
I mean,
Like where it says live, normal, just whatever those friggin' basic distinctions there are down there. Oh, so I think you have to
oh, wait, I'm sending a request.
send me a request. Oh, thank you. View. Yes, see?
Oh, I'll start sharing a live video soon.
That sound has to be off.
How do I start turning it off?
The sound.
That would make sense.
That has to be okay with us.
Is that okay,
Is that okay with us?
Don't actually
actually
repeat
repeat
it. It makes it really confusing. Is it making? What if I turn my sound off?
Yes,
because it still records, right?
So, sorry, people. What's happening right now is that I'm trying to do this with my housemate, who's right here.
Karen, if you look at these, instructions.
Oh, what are they? Are you still hearing an echo? Can't have your phone on and be live and be on live. So we need to troubleshoot this situation. Why can I still hear both phones? It's just because
Karen, can you not turn it off right now?
I did that.
Okay, we need to troubleshoot this. I don't think it's gonna work today.
Okay, I think we're gonna try and do this tomorrow, if and when we have figured out how to fix it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Or we'll just open it.
But hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it. Love you, Em.
At least we figured out how to do one thing.
Which is?
How to split screen.
Yes. But that audio thing.
Yeah.
What if
Mm-hmm.
we hooked headphones or attached like Bluetooth to both of them, but then just like left the headphones on the floor? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
so the sound was going somewhere, but not out.
I don't have Bluetooth headphones.
You don't need it when you could just plug
Or
yourself.
I do. Actually, never mind. But only big ones.
It doesn't matter because when
It's
you
just
don't
that the
use them.
sound needs to be off.
I think that would fix it.
Okay. I think, yeah, if you think that fixes it. I think
Well-
I'm also just going to like Google search, how do people do this?
People do this by not being in the same room. Like I don't know what situation would necessitate going live with somebody else who's sitting right next to you on 2 different phones. You know?
I mean, another way is like we just position the 2 phones in different places, right? At an angle where both people can be seen, no? Or farther away.
That wouldn't
It
solve the
wouldn't solve
audio.
the sound thing. Okay, I don't
thing.
understand the audio thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we could still do that and then also do the headphone thing.
Mhm.
We got another tripod?
Yeah.
Then maybe we can't.
Are you sincerely asking me? Actually, I do.
Yeah, because we need 2
a little
tripods.
baby tripod. But it's a baby.
Aren't you thrilled to be here for this
I know.
scintillating
I
conversation?
know.
That was annoying.
Close.
Close. Mais il n'y a pas. How do you say a cigar?
Cigar.
Shit. So should I delete this?
Unless you want to treasure that forever.
I forgot to treasure the first one forever.
Ugh.
That one was terrifying. What was the thing that kept really loud? Like that has to go off.
Yes, I think that was great.
It was wonderful.
It's getting to the point where like everyone needs their own home studio.
I'm sharing it to my story. Fuck it.
Yes.
Fuck it. All right.
Remarkable.
Remarkable.
This video is not sponsored by Remarkable. However, Remarkable, if you're watching, I really like your product.
We're both really
Yeah.
into you.
Yeah, we're fans, and I've heard you're coming out with a Remarkable 2, and I'm interested. I'm just saying.
I'm interested in the old one that gets abandoned when the Remarkable 2 comes out. But yes, if nothing else, this tablet is remarkable.
Yeah. I wonder if I can draw on the ebook.
I'm very surprised that
Of course I can. Of course I can. I could doodle on my ebook because it's remarkable.
That is
I can be like
remarkable.
I can be like Andrew, drawing a little Andrew here. Andrew is a really good artist, by the way. Did you know this?
Andrew looks like a little rabbit.
But wait, I'm gonna have.
Okay. While you do that, I feel like I
His
have to do a
intestines are
fucking
coming
jig
out.
or something.
And he's crying.
I feel like I have to do river dance to keep
because
people
of-
entertained.
Humanity. What a drawing. That's Andrew.
That's a very good Andrew.
He's crying because he's connected to his humanity.
My my dad is always, he looks quite happy.
Yeah, because he was happy.
I thought you said he was crying.
He's crying.
Oh, he's
tears of
crying.
joy. Like it's
Joy.
right. The last
Got
time I saw him in the hospital.
Got it.
What were you saying about your parents?
Saying that my dad, every time he talks about Andrew, calls him Andre. And every time he
Oh.
talks about Nicholas, calls him Nikolai. So
Oh.
I wonder how we ended up with a translation or whatever that.
How does he
did
go?
that to
But
the
Pierre is
names.
Pierre.
Yes.
Interesting. I don't know.
And he doesn't do it like, I think they should be
Right.
named this. He just says it like it's their names, which seems really feasible. Andre and Nikolai.
The IMDb has on Andrew, right?
I
I don't know. Obviously, there are many translations of this book and many
don't know. Yes.
PDF versions.
Okay. Today, we are not going live on Instagram. Today, we are not reading on Janessa's phone.
No.
Today, we are not doing handstands.
No.
Today, we commence book 11. Either that or this is the day we lose one of the people completely because she is totally absorbed in drawing on her book.
I was trying to draw. How do you think the collar is of a gray coat?
A swallowtail coat?
I don't know. Their uniforms they all care so much about.
I think it's high. I think it's
Yeah.
some high type of thing. Yeah, like I think it's like a Nehru collar, like a but thick.
So puffy sleeves.
I'm just, I didn't know I was commenting on the sleeves.
You can't have a high neck. with
Great,
a
so
puff sleeve.
stilettos. Okay, book 11.
Yeah.
Let's just
Are we
go.
just gonna launch?
I mean, do you realize that one of the last couple of days we talked for an hour?
Yes.
So you're like, oh, we read for 2 hours. We don't.
we don't. We read for 15 minutes.
We
And then-
talk fucking nonsense for an hour and a half.
Yeah. That's like that. I think that's pretty. That's pretty. What's the word? That's how most productivity goes, isn't it? You do nothing for an hour and then you're productive for 15 minutes.
Is that how productivity
I
goes?
think that's pretty much. I mean, I've never worked in an office,
I've
but
never
I
been
think that's
productive,
what
so
happens. There you go.
I'm not clear on.
Yeah, I think people on their computers are like browsing that web. I don't know what people do all day long. How long can one be productive?
What do you do all day long?
I don't know.
You know?
Well, I do, but I don't like to tell people. Instead,
Oh.
I like to say, I don't know. It's a mystery.
That's a lot like not knowing.
Yeah, it is.
Because if a thought is had in the forest, did it really fall?
Yeah. If
Isn't
a,
that how that goes?
if a thought is had in the forest,
does a bear shit in the
Ed.
You like mixed metaphors, right?
Yeah.
My friend from high school used to go, does a pope shit in the woods? And I was like that one because I think the two versions is the Pope Catholic.
Oh, okay. I was like, what's the other one?
Is the Pope Catholic and does a bear
Does
shit in
the
the
Pope
woods?
shit in the woods?
So I was trying to mix those plus if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it.
Doesn't make a shit.
Does it shit a pope? Cool. We're very adult, very erudite, very well read.
So fitting with this book.
We're witty, we're with it. We read The Economist.
We take pictures of The Economist.
We select books based on a stringent narrowing down, like there's a really rigorous process
Very rigorous.
before we here decide what to do.
And we don't just launch into a book. You know, that would be like going into a swimming pool without eating a hearty lunch first.
It would be a lot like that.
Yeah.
And would you ever do that?
No.
You know? So, what were you saying?
Just we do our research.
A huge amount of research.
Yeah.
A huge amount of
we practice voices.
Yes.
They sound a lot like our own, but
Voices, but
pay
also
closer attention.
yeah. It might be you might not be your ear might not be that attuned
That's probably it.
to the voices and also to the really subtle dialects and accents. I should stop.
What other?
I forgot for a second that anyone was here.
It does kind of feel like we're just in the living room.
Doesn't it? I mean, we are in the living room. That is actually happening.
There's been multiple times when I've thought that like I'm not actually recording. In which case, how weird would it be to spend like 2 hours talking to a thing that is not doing anything?
But we're only kind of talking to it.
Yeah, but still.
Yes. This is exactly like what I was trying to say about the YouTube bots causing shame.
Mm. Yeah.
It's just like Black Mirror shit. You know?
That would be a good episode of Black Mirror.
Which?
Like, so two girls do a live stream and then YouTube bots.
After doing a lot of research and rigorous selection process.
Rigorous. It's a very serious project that they've undertaken. And then a YouTube bot tries to shut them down.
Yeah.
And
Tries hard.
Tries hard. Like this sounds.
Tries hard or hardly tries.
And they think there's a person. They don't know it's a robot. And then they find out it is.
This is inspired by a true story. This might inspire a true story.
There you go.
That's what it is.
You know, it's like it's the one step up from like, will AI ever have feelings? It's like, can AI ever elicit
Create
feelings in
feelings.
us? Like, can a robot shame you?
Wait, did you call that the step after? Or which step is that?
I mean, I think actually this can already be said as true.
Yes, again. So I just wanted to make
we
clear
answered
there was
it.
a step that is
It's a
far
step.
behind us.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And yeah, twist ending. They both die.
Who? Us?
Sure.
I mean, it's not us. The two women is
The
who I
two
meant.
fictional
the two girls in the
characters
thing.
after much studious fiction writing.
Did you just say studious? Bushes. Oh gosh, some poor soul. Oh.
What did we read yesterday?
Now I feel like recently it's always on me to remember what we read. I feel like it used to be entirely on you.
Yes, that's true.
I used to be like, what have you read? I don't know. And then the last 3 days I've been like, wait,
Wait a second.
come on, how
I've
come
been testing.
how come I have to remember anything?
I mean, I can take a guess, stab at it.
No, this is one of those things that like I just make up in my mind that I don't remember.
Yeah,
But then have I even applied myself?
remember it every time.
Only because there's a like the pressure of the moment because you're just like looking at me like, well, yeah, like that. And then I'm like, like that. Napoleon's upset, they withdraw.
Napoleon's always upset.
No, he's upset because he feels like his right arm, his like most reliable, strongest of his arms, is like dead.
Ugh. Yes,
And he can't write left-handed.
apparently not. Should have thought of that before, Napoleon.
Before what?
Before Borodino.
Before Borodino.
I'm into it.
I know.
That's gonna be the name of my memoir.
My memoir.
My memoir.
There's a lot of M's in my memoir.
Before Borodino, my memoir.
Before Borodino. My memoir.
Yeah, we didn't read a lot yesterday,
No, we talked a lot of shit.
but it was because we wanted to leave book 10 intact and start a new book
Yes.
fresh.
New day. TGIF.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Like T, the mother loving G, IF.
Yeah, what a week it's been.
I know. And what a difference the weekend is going to bring. Today I was like, is it Sunday today? No,
Sure.
it's not Monday. Is it? Oh, it feels like a Saturday.
Mm. It did feel like a Saturday.
Did it?
Yeah.
It's Friday.
What felt Friday about today?
Friday is the day that what felt Friday about today?
Yeah.
I went to happy hour.
Oh, yeah.
I got wasted
Yeah.
in my pencil skirt
Yeah.
because I'd just
Right.
come from work.
Yeah.
I work in pencil skirts.
Like,
So that's my
like
business. Yeah, not all the other skirts.
Just one style of skirt.
Just a style of skirt. Like if you need a pencil skirt, you would be interested in the industry in which I work. I gotta go. Yeah, so that's what I do for a living. If you were ever on the stream wondering, what does this worker bee
Yeah.
office drone? No, what industry does she
Yeah,
drone
yeah.
in?
Definitely. Everyone's been asking that.
Yeah, lot of times in the comments, it's like, either it's technology or it's I feel like I'm high. I'm not though.
No, she's just drunk.
I'm just
happy
wasted from happy hour. I slipped when I was getting off a bar stool, and the conservative slit in my pencil skirt just
Got unconservative real fast.
it got slutty.
It got liberal, like.
It got liberal. It became like progressive right in the middle of the bar.
Wow.
Yeah, everyone was watching.
Mm. Exciting day.
Yeah, the A-liners in the corner were like, that's why you don't put slits in a skirt.
Ugh, the snooty A-line.
I know.
Ugh.
It's like, why don't you innovate? For once in your life. How long have we been doing A-lines? I need to stop before I actually start to believe that I work in skirts. Sometimes that happens.
Kind of like the idea of this business now.
Skirt?
Skirt. That's
Just a skirt.
it. Just one.
Like that Wu-Tang album. It was a Wu-Tang album that there was only one.
There was only one
Yes.
album?
Yeah.
Okay.
You had to go somewhere to listen to it.
Oh, that's crazy.
It was after.
Close to
know.
you're imagining the skirt multiple people get to wear.
What? The skirt has no.
If you only have one product, like a skirt, and you sell that product, and you then get to say, "I just sold my business."
I don't think. No. I mean, if you want to, you could say that without even selling a skirt. You could just go around. You could tell these people right now you sold your business.
Yeah, if I was like, "Hi, I'm starting a business
Mm-hmm.
for a salad I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I put it on Postmates, right? Because obviously,
But then you wouldn't have started a business. You're using Postmates.
no, I'm not ordering. No, wait, I'm not ordering. I'm delivering it.
Okay. So you did, yeah, you're okay, yeah, I'm with you.
So I have a business.
You are certainly a business. There's little doubt of that, if anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then someone buys my salad, and it's like I just went out of business.
I think very much we should stop talking. Oh my god. You can be like, yeah, this is the street that guy lives on. And people will be like, what guy? And you'd be like, the guy who put me out of business. Yeah.
Great.
So,
So War and Peace
yeah,
is a book that we're reading,
yes.
and we're on book 11.
11.
I know you would think like, wait, there's books inside this book. Yes, there
I know
are.
that's always very, very confusing.
Yeah, it's like a Russian book.
It's like a Russian book. I was just validating you, okay?
Yeah,
It is like a Russian book.
yeah, Russian nest book.
Yeah. Nesting Russian book.
Mhm,
Russian.
mhm. A rushing.
Russian. A Russian nesting book. Or is it a nesting Russian book? Nesting doll? Rusting?
Oh, a rusting.
A rusty.
Rusty Nussian doll.
Oh my god, okay. Okay. This is still in 1812, which is where we were in book 10.
Yeah, we're not leaving. Is there anything else that happened? I don't think so. It kind of gave away the ending to the war, but I don't think we need to repeat that.
No, because everyone knows how this war went. Yeah.
The French win.
Should I put the air conditioning on again?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's why I was asking you.
No, it's good.
Okay. Unveil my sweatpants. It's the big reveal.
5, 6, 7, 8.
You think they do that in other languages?
What do you mean?
Like in dance class countdown.
That's a great question. I think so.
That's why these numbers are on here.
Oh, you know what I thought they were?
Just random numbers.
No, I thought they were Sesame Street pants.
Oh!
And I wondered at first if there was like 1, 2,
1,
3,
2, 3,
4
4
on the
one
other side. Yeah.
There's not.
6,
See?
7, 8. Ugh. Yeah, that makes more sense actually. I like that.
But the question remains, like, how do they count down in dance classes?
6, 6, 7, 8. Why would they do that?
I don't know if they do. I mean, I don't think there's a reason they wouldn't. But
Yeah.
like, for example, what if there were 2 syllables or more than 1 syllable? I guess 7 is 2 syllables.
Oh. 6, 7, 8. Yeah, like
It's just easier with single syllables to count down.
6, 7. I don't think 7 is upper. I can't think of other numbers right now.
Me either.
No, I mean like other numbers in other languages.
I can think of lots, but let's not.
Okay.
Let's read chapter 1.
Okay. The lozenge? Are you okay?
Lozenge. Those are ancient lozenges.
I know. Larry might have some.
I think I'm okay. I might get a beverage soon. Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Chapter 1. Absolute continuity of motion is not comprehensible to the human mind. We're going in.
Yeah, we are.
This is like, there's no pussyfooting around the edge of the pool. There's no dipping your toes in. There's just only book 11. It's just the deeps. Absolute continuity of motion is not comprehensible to the human mind. Laws of motion of any kind become comprehensible to man only when he examines arbitrarily selected elements of that motion. But at the same time, a large proportion of human error comes from the arbitrary division of continuous motion into discontinuous elements. There is a well-known so-called sophism of the ancients consisting in this: that Achilles could never catch up with the tortoise he was following, in spite of the fact that he traveled 10 times as fast as the tortoise. By the time Achilles has covered the distance that separated him from the tortoise has covered 1/10 of that distance ahead of him. When Achilles has covered that 10th, the tortoise has covered another 100th, and so on forever. Jesus. I hate that.
Wait, what? Achilles could never catch up with the tortoise he was following.
So, like, if two trains leave a station
Yeah.
at different times.
Yeah.
Which one gets there first?
Is it that? Wait.
No, it's not. It's
He
like
could
an
never catch up
asymptote.
with the tortoise he was following, in spite of the fact that he traveled 10 times as fast as the tortoise. By the time Achilles had covered the distance that separated him from the tortoise had covered 1/10 of that distance ahead of him.
So because the tortoise keeps moving.
Yeah, but if he's faster.
I know. But it's like that equation that ends up in an asymptote.
No.
It's like part of a parabola, except it keeps approaching the x-axis forever, but then never actually touches.
Right, okay. This problem, yeah, okay. Okay. Yes.
I want to say it's like
They
the
never meet.
inverse of like an exponential
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
curve.
Yeah. So even though like it gets so close together,
Yeah.
it never actually touches.
Right. So, but I do agree that it is confusing. But I think that that's what they're trying to say, which is that he might have covered this, but in that amount of time, the tortoise has gone like this much. And then when he covers that, he's gone like this much.
Mhm.
But that's not actually true, because I feel like 3 steps later, it would be over.
You'd be like, hey, tortoise. But wait,
Yeah.
let's keep
Okay.
the absurd answer.
And so on forever. This problem seemed to the ancients insoluble. The absurd answer that Achilles could never overtake the tortoise resulted from this: that motion was arbitrarily divided into discontinuous elements, whereas the motion both of Achilles and of the tortoise was continuous.
By adopting smaller and smaller elements of motion, we only approach a solution of the problem, but never reach it, only when we have admitted the conception of the infinitely small and the resulting geometrical progression with a common ratio of 1/10, and have found the sum of this progression to infinity, do we reach a solution of the problem.
Cool.
Love this book so far.
I mean, it's that same asymptote thing. He's just talking about a small s.
Yeah.
A modern branch of mathematics, having achieved the art of dealing with the infinitely small, can now yield solutions in other more complex problems of motion which used to appear insoluble. Speaking of crazy shit, did you ever do proofs in math where the one really popular and infuriating one was proving that 0.99 repeating equaled 1?
Equaled 1.
Yes. I would have to reenact the whole proof to show you, and I neither understood it at the time nor retained it, so I can do very little of that. but it was a demonstration that I fucking watched 3, 4, 5 times. Because for whatever reason, it was like a really salient event in math class. And I just don't understand, because I thought the 0.9 repeating was a little bit like this type of thing, in that it never reaches 1, but apparently it's equals 1, which seems nonsensical to me. Anyway, if anyone knows how 0.99 repeating equals 1, please share. You can't work it out. It's like one of those things that you have to do the proof, because it was in proofs that was a section of.
Okay. I'll just take your word for it.
I mean, we could look it up.
Is it my turn to read?
Yes, this modern branch.
This modern branch of mathematics, unknown to the ancients, when dealing with problems of motion, admits the conception of the infinitely small, and so conforms to the chief condition of motion, absolute continuity, and thereby corrects the inevitable error which the human mind cannot avoid when it deals with separate elements of motion instead of examining continuous motion.
In seeking the laws of historical movement, just the same thing happens. The movement of humanity, arising as it does from innumerable arbitrary human wills, is continuous.
To understand the laws of this continuous movement is the aim of history. But to arrive at these laws, resulting from the sum of all those human wills, man's mind postulates arbitrary and disconnected units. The first method of history is to take an arbitrarily selected series of continuous events and examine it apart from others, though there is and can be no beginning to any event, for one event always flows uninterruptedly from another.
This is literally how this book is written. The second method is to consider the actions of some one man, a king or a commander, as equivalent to the sum of many individual wills, whereas the sum of individual wills is never expressed by the activity of a single historic personage.
Historical science, in its endeavor to draw nearer to truth continually, takes smaller and smaller units for examination. But however small the units it takes, we feel that to take any unit disconnected from others, or to assume a beginning of any phenomenon, or to say that the will of many men is expressed by the actions of any one historic personage, is in itself false.
It needs no critical exertion to reduce utterly to dust any deductions drawn from history. It is merely necessary to select some larger or smaller unit as the subject of observation, as criticism has every right to do, seeing that whatever unit history observes must always be arbitrarily selected.
Only by taking infinitesimally small units for observation, the differential of history, that is, the individual tendencies of men, and attaining to the art of integrating them, that is, finding the sum of these infinitesimals, can we hope to arrive at the laws of history.
The first 15 years of the 19th century in Europe present an extraordinary movement of millions of people. Men leave their customary pursuits, hasten from one side of Europe to the other, plunder and slaughter one another, triumph and are plunged in despair, and some years the whole course of life is altered and presents an intensive movement which first increases and then slackens. What was the cause of this movement? By what laws was it governed? Asks the mind of man.
The historians, replying to this question, lay before us the sayings and doings of a few dozen men in a building in the city of Paris, calling these sayings and doings the Revolution. Then they give a detailed biography of Napoleon and of certain people favorable or hostile to him, tell of the influence some of these people had on others, and say, that is why this movement took place, and those are its laws.
But the mind of man not only refuses to believe this explanation, but plainly says that this method of explanation is fallacious, because in it a weaker phenomenon is taken as the cause of a stronger. The sum of human wills produced the revolution and Napoleon, and only the sum of those wills first tolerated and then destroyed them.
But every time there have been conquests, there have been conquerors. Every time there has been a revolution in any state, there have been great men, says history. And indeed, human reason replies, every time conquerors appear, there have been wars. But this does not prove that the conquerors caused the wars, and that it is possible to find the laws of a war in the personal activity of a single man. Whenever I look at my watch and its hands point to 10, I hear the bells of the neighboring church. But because the bells begin to ring when the hands of the clock reach 10, I have no right to assume that the movement of the bells is caused by the position of the hands of the watch.
I'm so irritated. Whenever I see the movement of a locomotive, I hear the whistle and see the valves opening and wheels turning, but I have no right to conclude that the whistling and the turning of the wheels are the cause of the movement of the engine.
The peasants say that a cold wind blows in late spring because the oaks are budding. And really, every spring cold winds do blow when the oak is budding. But though I do not know what causes the cold winds to blow when the oak buds unfold, oh my god, I cannot agree with the peasants that the unfolding of the oak buds is the cause of the cold wind. For the force of the wind is beyond the influence of the buds. I see only a coincidence of occurrences such as happens with all the phenomena of life. And I see that however much and however carefully I observe the hands of the watch, and the valves and wheels of the engine and the oak, I shall not discover the cause of the bells ringing, the engine moving, or of the winds of spring.
It's a bit of a jump.
To that I must entirely change my point of view, and study the laws of the movement of steam, of the bells, and of the wind. History must do the same, and attempts in this direction have already been made.
To study the laws of history, we must completely change the subject of our observation, must leave aside kings, ministers, and generals, and study the common, infinitesimally small elements by which the masses are moved. No one can say in how far it is possible for man to advance in this way toward an understanding of the laws of history, but it is evident that only along that path does the possibility of discovering the laws of history lie, and that as yet not a millionth part as much mental effort has been applied in this direction by historians as has been devoted to describing the actions of various kings, commanders, and ministers, and propounding the historian's own reflections concerning these actions.
End of chapter.
So correlation is not
Causation.
causation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was so annoying. Okay. Chapter 2.
Mhm.
The forces of a dozen European nations burst into Russia. The Russian army and people avoided a collision till Smolensk was reached, and again from Smolensk to Borodino. The French army pushed on to Moscow, its goal, its impetus ever increasing as it neared its aim, just as the velocity of a falling body increases as it approaches the earth. He's taken a sciencey turn, a physicsy
Seriously.
turn.
Yeah.
Behind it was 700 miles of hunger-stricken hostile country. Ahead were a few dozen miles separating it from its goal. Every soldier in Napoleon's army felt this, and the invasion moved on by its own momentum.
The more the Russian army retreated, the more fiercely a spirit of hatred of the enemy flared up. And while it retreated, the army increased and consolidated. At Borodino, a collision took place. Neither army was broken up, but the Russian army retreated immediately after the collision, as inevitably as a ball recoils after colliding with another, having greater momentum. And with equal inevitability, the ball of invasion that had advanced with such momentum rolled on for some distance, though the collision had deprived it of all its force.
The Russians retreated 80 miles to beyond Moscow, and the French reached Moscow, and there came to a standstill. For 5 weeks after that, there was not a single battle. The French did not move. As a bleeding, mortally wounded animal licks its wounds, they remained inert in Moscow for 5 weeks, and then suddenly, with no fresh reason, fled back. They made a dash for the Kaluga road, and after a victory at Maloyaroslavets, the field of conflict again remained theirs. Without undertaking a single serious battle, they fled still more rapidly back to Smolensk, beyond the Berezina, beyond Vilna, and farther still.
On the evening of the 26th of August, Kutuzov and the whole Russian army were convinced that the Battle of Borodino was a victory. Kutuzov reported so to the emperor. He gave orders to prepare for a fresh conflict to finish the enemy, and did this not to deceive anyone, but because he knew that the enemy was beaten, as everyone who had taken part in the battle knew it.
But all that evening and next day, reports came in, one after another, of unheard-of losses, of the loss of half the army, and a fresh battle proved physically impossible.
It was impossible to give battle before information had been collected. The wounded gathered in, the supplies of ammunition replenished, the slain reckoned up, new officers appointed to replace those who had been killed, and before the men who had had food and sleep. And meanwhile, the very next morning after the battle, the French army advanced itself upon the Russians. carried forward by the force of its own momentum, now seemingly increased in inverse proportion to the square of the distance from its aim. Kutuzov's wish was to attack next day, and the whole army desired to do so. But to make an attack, the wish to do so is not sufficient. There must also be a possibility of doing it, and that possibility did not exist. It was impossible not to retreat a day's march, and then in the same way, it was impossible not to retreat another, and a third day's march. And at last, on the 1st of September, when the army drew near Moscow, despite the strength of the feeling that had arisen in all ranks, the force of circumstances compelled it to retire beyond Moscow. And the troops retired once more, last day's march, and abandoned Moscow to the enemy.
For people accustomed to think that plans of campaign and battles are made by generals, no one thinks that. As any one of us sitting over a map in his study may imagine how he would have arranged things in this or that battle, the questions present themselves. Why did Kutuzov during the retreat not do this or that? Why did he not take up a position before reaching Philly? Why did he not retire at once by the Kaluga road, abandoning Moscow, and so on? People accustomed to think in that way forget or do not know the inevitable conditions which always limit the activities of any commander-in-chief. The activity of a commander-in-chief does not at all resemble the activity we imagine to ourselves when we sit at ease in our studies examining some campaign on a map, a certain number of troops on this and that side in a certain known locality, and begin our plans from some given moment. A commander-in-chief is never dealing with the beginning of any event, the position from which we always contemplate it. The commander-in-chief is always in the midst of a series of shifting events, and so he never can at any moment consider the whole import of an event that is occurring. Moment by moment, the event is imperceptibly shaping itself, and at every moment of this continuous, uninterrupted shaping of events, the commander-in-chief is in the midst of a most complex play of intrigues, worries, contingencies, authorities, projects, counsels, threats, and deceptions, and is continually obliged to reply to innumerable questions addressed to him, which constantly conflict with one another.
Learned military authorities quite seriously tell us that Kutuzov should have moved his army to the Kaluga road long before reaching Philly, and that somebody actually submitted such a proposal to him. But a commander-in-chief, especially at a difficult moment, has always before him not one proposal, but dozens simultaneously. And all these proposals, based on strategics and tactics, contradict each other.
A commander-in-chief's business, it would seem, is simply to choose one of these projects, but even that he cannot do. Events and time do not wait. For instance, on the 28th, it is suggested to him to cross to the Kaluga road, but just then an adjutant gallops up from Miloradovich, asking whether he is to engage the French or retire. An order must be given him at once, that instant, and the order to retreat carries us past the turn to the Kaluga road. And after the adjutant comes, the commissary general asking where the stores are to be taken, and the chief of the hospitals asks where the wounded are to go, and a courier from Petersburg brings a letter from the sovereign which does not admit of the possibility of abandoning Moscow, and the commander-in-chief's rival, the man who is undermining him, and there are always not merely one but several such, presents a new project diametrically opposed to that of turning to the Kaluga road, and the commander-in-chief himself needs sleep and refreshments to maintain his energy, and a respectable general who has been overlooked in the distribution of rewards comes to complain, and the inhabitants of the district pray to be defended, and an officer sent to inspect the locality comes in and gives a report quite contrary to what was said by the officer previously sent. And a spy, a prisoner, and a general who has been on reconnaissance all describe the position of the enemy's army differently. People accustomed to misunderstand or to forget these inevitable conditions of a commander-in-chief's actions describe to us, for instance, the position of the army at Philly and assume that the commander-in-chief could, on the 1st of September, quite freely decide whether to abandon Moscow or defend it, whereas with the Russian army less than 4 miles from Moscow, no such question existed. When had the question been settled? At Drissa and at Smolensk, and most palpably of all, on the 24th of August at Shevardino, and on the 26th at Borodino, and each day and hour and minute of the retreat from Borodino to Philly.
Mhm. Good stuff.
It's his favorite point.
Yeah. He has to really make sure we get it. Chapter 3.
This is literally how he writes the book, though.
Yeah.
This perspective explains almost everything about the way he writes. I'm remembering what it was like to write essays on books. Suddenly.
Really?
Yeah, just suddenly
You
thought.
could write a hell of a paper on Tolstoy now.
Suddenly, yeah. If I had to just like pick something to write about, I feel like I would write about that.
Yeah.
That it would be that the like idiosyncrasies of his writing
Mhm.
are directly reflected by what he believes about history and blah 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 blah. Maybe that's really obvious, and there are already a million essays on it. But
Yeah,
if I were in
so
high
smart.
school, I would have written it.
Yeah. You know how I was like, when's the war starting?
Yeah.
And like, why did we start? Why do we spend so much time in the city and like all these things? That's what he's doing.
Because the war started in Anna Pavlovna's party,
Pretty much.
and the war started
Mhm.
in Chavarino,
Yeah.
and the war started until Tolstoy was born.
Mhm.
And the war started when Natasha's heart was broken.
Wanna go back?
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 3. When Ermolov, having been sent to Kutuzov to inspect the position, told the field marshal that it was impossible to fight there before Moscow and that they must retreat, Kutuzov looked at him in silence. "Give me your hand," said he, and turning it over so as to feel the pulse, added, "You are not well, my dear fellow. Think what you are saying." Kutuzov could not yet admit the possibility of retreating beyond Moscow without a battle. On the Polklony Hill, 4 miles from the Dorogomilov Gate at Moscow, Kutuzov got out of his carriage and sat down on a bench by the roadside. A great crowd of generals gathered round him, and the Count Rostopchin, who had come out from Moscow, joined them. This brilliant company separated into several groups who all discussed the advantages and disadvantages of the position, the state of the army, the plans suggested, the situation of Moscow, and military questions generally. Though they had not been summoned for the purpose, and though it was not so called, they all felt that this was really a council of war. The conversations all dealt with public questions. If anyone gave or asked for personal news, it was done in a whisper, and they immediately reverted to general matters. No jokes, or laughter, or smiles even, were seen among these men. They evidently all made an effort to hold themselves at the height the situation demanded. And all these groups, while talking among themselves, tried to keep near the commander-in-chief, whose bench formed the center of the gathering, and to speak so that he might overhear them. The commander-in-chief listened to what was being said, and sometimes asked them to repeat their remarks, but did not himself take part in the conversations or express any opinion. After hearing what was being said by one or other of these groups, he generally turned away with an air of disappointment, as though they were not speaking of anything he wished to hear. Some discussed the position that had been chosen, criticizing not the position itself as much as the mental capacity of those who had chosen it. Others argued that a mistake had been made earlier and that a battle should have been fought 2 days before. Others again spoke of the Battle of Salamanca, which was described by Crossard, a newly arrived Frenchman in a Spanish uniform. This Frenchman and one of the German princes serving with the Russian army were discussing the siege of Saragossa and considering the possibility of defending Moscow in a similar manner. Count Rostopchin was telling a fourth group that he was prepared to die with the city train bands under the walls of the capital, but that he still could not help regretting having been left in ignorance of what was happening, and that had he known it sooner, would have been different. Had he known it sooner, things would have been different. A fifth group, displaying the profundity of their strategic perceptions, discussed the direction of the troops.
The direction of the troops.
The direction the troops would now have to take. A sixth group was talking absolute nonsense. Kutuzov's expression grew more and more preoccupied and gloomy. From all this talk, he saw only one thing, that to defend Moscow was a physical impossibility in the full meaning of those words. That is to say, so utterly impossible that if any senseless commander were to give orders to fight, confusion would result, but the battle would still not take place. It would not take place because the commanders not merely all recognized the position to be impossible, But in their conversations, we're only discussing what would happen after its inevitable abandonment. How could the commanders lead their troops to a field of battle they considered it impossible to hold? The lower grade officers and even the soldiers, who to reason, also considered the position impossible and therefore could not go to fight, fully convinced as they were of defeat. If Bennigsen insisted on the position being defended and others still discussed it, the question was no longer important in itself, but only as a pretext for disputes and intrigue. This Kutuzov knew well.
What was that paragraph about?
It's about lots of people had lots of ideas,
Okay,
as we've seen many, many times.
cool.
And basically, there's no resolution because people are saying, like, you should do this, or you should do that, or you should do this. But the army cannot defend a position which the commanders do not believe is the right position because they'll go into battle believing they're going to lose.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Bennigsen, who had chosen the position, warmly displayed his Russian patriotism. Kutuzov could not listen to this without wincing, by insisting that Moscow must be defended. His aim was as clear as daylight to Kutuzov. If the defense failed, to throw the blame on Kutuzov, who had brought the army as far as the Sparrow Hills without giving battle. If it succeeded, to claim the success as his own, or if battle were not given, to clear himself of the crime of abandoning Moscow. But this intrigue did not now occupy the old man's mind. One terrible question absorbed him, and to that question he heard no reply from anyone. The question for him now was, have I really allowed Napoleon to reach Moscow? And when did I do so? Hang on. I thought it was a hard, like, I think I remember, like, kind of reading about this, but when did they reach Moscow?
So the Russians did have to retreat
Why?
because they were fewer men.
I thought the French retreated. Like an animal who licks its wounds. Remember
Yeah.
that? Like, I know it was in that section that they talked about how it happened that the French got to Moscow, but I was not able to follow it really.
Like the Russians lost half their army. I think they did have to retreat.
Okay.
It's kind of weird how he's telling the story because it seems like he said like day one of the battle, and I know there was like another day of battle that he just completely skipped over.
What the other day?
Remember like the end of that day, and it was like Kutuzov was like, "Great, we're gonna attack again in
Yes.
the morning," and then we never see the attack again in the morning.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened during that battle. It sounds like
I mean, we were given summaries of it, but I also feel like I don't know.
yeah. I mean, evidently they did have to retreat in the end. I think it's possible to win a battle and still have to retreat,
Right. Okay.
right? Because it's just like
I thought that
many-
it seemed like a bad idea for the French. I thought it seemed like a bad idea after that Borodino business to continue advancing. But I guess they
But
did
they did.
advance.
They did.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, right, they burned Moscow, right?
I mean, I remember that from Napoleon, but I
Yeah.
don't remember that from this. Also, Bennigsen, not Bennigsen, Rostopchin. Wasn't Rostopchin talking a lot of shit about how if he had only known, like 2 pages ago?
Yes. If he had known what?
I don't know. Really, the only reason I'm asking this is because Kutuzov only has one question.
Yeah.
And his one and only question is not any of this nonsense. It's, have I really allowed Napoleon to reach Moscow? And when did I do so? So then when he said that, I was like, you know what? I need to say that I don't know when he
Yeah,
did so.
when did you do that? Okay.
Anyway, maybe it'll be revealed.
Yeah.
When was it decided? Can it have been yesterday when I ordered Platov? Sounds awfully Greek suddenly. To retreat? Or was it the evening before when I had a nap and told Bennigsen to issue orders? Or was it earlier still? When was this terrible affair decided? Moscow must be abandoned. So I think they're up to there, but they aren't in there. I don't think they've burned it.
Oh no.
Moscow must be abandoned.
Okay, so it's like happening right now. Like
I should stop now. The army must retreat, and the order to do so must be given. To give that terrible order seemed to him equivalent to resigning the command of the army. And not only did he love power, to which he was accustomed, the honors awarded to Prince Prozorovsky, under whom he had served in Turkey, galled him. But he was convinced that he was destined to save Russia, and that was why, against the emperor's wish and by the will of the people, he had been chosen commander-in-chief. He was convinced that he alone could maintain command of the army in these difficult circumstances, and that in all the world he alone could encounter the invincible Napoleon without fear. And he was horrified at the thought of the order he had to issue. But something had to be decided, and these conversations around him, which were assuming too free a character, must be stopped.
he called the most important generals to him.
My head, be it good or bad, must depend on itself, said he, rising from the bench. And he rode to Feely, where his carriages were waiting.
So yeah, sorry. I guess like during this conversation, they're all meeting, talking about what's to be done, and he realizes like they have to give up Moscow. And so I think you get this. So he's like, yeah, how did we get into this situation? Okay.
Yeah, I was just hoping that there was some actual information
There
about
was like
how they got into
more
the
pointed
situation.
of like how actually went.
Because we weren't here for that.
Because what happened? You just skipped a bunch of things.
I suspect that it was in that passage that I think I read a lot of, where it was like a crouching animal licking, like a wounded animal. I think in there was more explanation, and I might have checked out.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never checked out.
No.
So I don't know what I was talking about just now, but
Chapter 4. The Council of War began to assemble at 2 in the afternoon in the better and roomier part of Andrew Savostianov's hut. The men, women, and children of the large peasant family crowded into the back room across the passage. Only Malasha, Andrew's 6-year-old granddaughter, whom His Serene Highness had petted, and to whom he had given a lump of sugar while drinking his tea, remained on the top of the brick oven in the larger room. Malasha looked down from the oven with shy delight at the faces, uniforms, and decorations of the general, who one after another came into the room and sat down on the broad benches in the corners under the icons. Granddad himself, as Malasha in her own mind called Kutuzov, sat apart in a dark corner behind the oven. He sat sunk deep in a folding armchair and continually cleared his throat and pulled at the collar of his coat, which, though it was unbuttoned, still seemed to pinch his neck. Those who entered went up one by one to the field marshal. He pressed the hands of some and nodded to others. His adjutant, Kaysarov, was about to draw back the curtain of the window facing Kutuzov, but the latter moved his hand angrily, and Kaysarov understood that His Serene Highness did not wish his face to be seen.
round the peasants' deal table, on which lay maps, plans, pencils, and papers, so many people gathered that the orderlies brought in another bench and put it beside the table. Ermolov, Kaysarov, and Toll, who had just arrived, sat down on his bench. In the foremost place, immediately under the icons, sat Barclay the Tully, his high forehead merging into his bald crown. He had a St. George's cross round his neck and looked pale and ill. He had been feverish for 2 days and was now shivering and in pain. Beside him sat Uvarov, who, with rapid gesticulations, was giving him some information, speaking in low tones, as they all did. Chubby little Doktorov was listening attentively, with eyebrows raised and arms folded on his stomach. On the other side sat Count Osterman Tolstoy, seemingly absorbed in his own thoughts. His broad head, with its bold features, and you know that I almost said his broad, because of how many times I've seen the museum's name written at this point, that I literally thought of that first. His broad head, with its bold features and glittering eyes, was resting on his hand. Raevsky, twitching forward, the black hair on his temples, as was his habit, glanced now at Kutuzov and now at the door with a look of impatience. Konovnitsin's firm, handsome, and kindly face was lit up by a tender, sly smile. His glance met Malasha's, and the expression of his eyes caused the little girl to smile.
I don't think we've met him before. They were all waiting for Benningsen, who on the pretext of inspecting the position was finishing his savory dinner. They waited for him from 4 till 6 o'clock and did not begin their deliberations all that time, talked in low tones of other matters.
Only when Bennigsen had entered the hut did Kutuzov leave his corner and draw toward the table, but not near enough for the candles that had been placed there to light up his face.
Benningsen opened the council with the question, are we to abandon Russia's ancient and sacred capital without a struggle, or are we to defend it? A prolonged and general silence followed. There was a frown on every face, and only Kutuzov's angry grunts and occasional cough broke the silence. All eyes were gazing at him. Malasha too looked at Grandad. She was nearest to him and saw now his face puckered. He seemed about to cry, but this did not last long.
Russia's ancient and sacred capital, he suddenly said, repeating Bennigsen's words in an angry voice and thereby drawing attention to the false note in them. Allow me to tell you, Your Excellency, that question has no meaning for a Russian. He lurched his heavy body forward. Such a question cannot be put. It is senseless. The question I have asked these gentlemen to meet to discuss is a military one. The question is that of saving Russia. Is it better to give up Moscow without a battle, or by accepting battle to risk losing the army as well as Moscow? That is the question on which I want your opinion. And he sank back into his chair.
The discussion began. Benningsen did not yet consider his game lost, admitting the view of Barclay and others that a defensive battle at Fili was impossible, but imbued with Russian patriotism and the love of Moscow, he proposed to move troops from the right to the left flank during the night and attack the French right flank the following day. Opinions were divided, and arguments were advanced for and against that project. Ermolov, Doktorov, and Oraevsky agreed with Benningsen. Whether feeling it necessary to make a sacrifice before abandoning the capital or guided by other personal considerations, these generals seemed not to understand that this council could not alter the inevitable course of events, and that Moscow was in effect already abandoned. The other generals, however, understood it, and leaving aside the question of Moscow, of the direction the army should take in its retreat. Malasha, who kept her eyes fixed on what was going on before her, understood the meaning of the council differently. It seemed to her that it was only a personal struggle between Grandad and Longcoat, as she termed Benson. She saw that they grew spiteful when they spoke to one another, and in her heart she sided with Grandad. In the midst of the conversation, she noticed Grandad gave Benningsen a quick, subtle glance, and then to her joys, he saw that Grandad said something to... Shouldn't that be she saw? Anyway, she saw that Grandad said something to Longcoat, which settled him. Benningsen suddenly reddened and paced angrily up and down the room. What so affected him was Kutuzov's calm and quiet comment on the advantage or disadvantage of Benningsen's proposal to move troops by night from the right to the left flank to attack the French's right wing.
Gentlemen, said Kutuzov, I cannot approve of the Count's plan. Moving troops in close proximity to an enemy is always dangerous, and military history supports that view. For instance, Kutuzov seemed to reflect, searching for an example. Then, with a clear, naive look at Benningsen, he added, oh yes, take the Battle of Friedland, which I think the Count well remembers, and which was not fully successful only because our troops were rearranged too near the enemy.
There followed a momentary pause, which seemed very long to them all.
The discussion recommenced, but pauses frequently occurred, and they all felt that there was no more to be said.
During one of these pauses, Kutuzov heaved a deep sigh as if preparing to speak. They all looked at him.
Well, gentlemen, I see that it is I who will have to pay for the broken crockery, said he, and rising slowly, he moved to the table. Gentlemen, I have heard your views. Some of you will not agree with me, but I, he paused, by the authority entrusted to me by my sovereign and country, order a retreat.
After that, the generals began to disperse with solemnity and circumspect silence of people who are leaving after a funeral.
Some of the generals, in low tones and in a strain very different from the way they had spoken during the council, communicated something to their commander-in-chief.
Malasha, who had long been expected for supper, climbed carefully backwards down from the oven, her bare little feet catching at its projections, and slipping between the legs of the general, she darted out of the room.
How far apart are his legs? A 6-year-old darted between someone's legs?
She's very malnourished. She's very small.
When he had dismissed the generals, Kutuzov sat a long time with his elbows on the table, thinking always of the same terrible question. When? When did the abandonment of Moscow become inevitable? When was that done which settled the matter? And who was to blame for it?
Did not expect this, said he to his adjutant Schneider when the latter came in late that night. I did not expect this. I did not think this would happen.
You should take some rest, Your Serene Highness, replied Schneider.
But no, they shall eat horse flesh yet, like the Turks, exclaimed Kutuzov without replying, striking the table with his podgy fist. They shall too.
That was like a very unexpected cliffhanger.
Seriously, we haven't really
Tolstoy's
had
not
one
one
of
for
those.
cliffhangers, exactly.
Yep.
Chapter 5.
On Wikipedia, I don't know. I'm a bit confused about
What are you confused about?
Battle of Borodino.
Oh, you are seeking historical clarification, are you?
Yeah, because I wonder. I don't know. I wonder if we're not actually there yet. I'm very confused about this. This is a very long Wikipedia article. So many paintings and pictures.
I guess the Battle of Borodino was a complex matter.
Yeah, like I wonder if we're kind of like still in it.
Yeah, that might be. That might be.
Whew. At one point, I should read this.
Read what, War and Peace?
Probably that too. Interesting. I mean, these are all historians, probably.
You mean dongles?
Like, this is strange. This victory. Just one more source of losses to the French. Ultimately cost Napoleon's army as it allowed the French emperor to believe that the campaign was winnable, exhausting his forces as he went on to Moscow to await a surrender that would never come. Historian Rhine, historians, notes that the Borodino victory allowed Napoleon to move on to Moscow, where, even allowing for the arrival of reinforcements, the French army only possessed a maximum of 95,000 men who would be ill-equipped to win a battle due to the lack of supplies and ammunition. The Grand Army suffered 66% of its casualties by the time of the Moscow retreat. Snow, starvation, and typhus ensured that only 23,000 men returned across the Russian border alive. Spoiler, I'm sorry. We all knew that was coming. Oh. What do you think about historical reenactments?
I think they are absolutely central to our. I think they're stupid.
The battle was famously described by Leo Tolstoy in his novel War and Peace.
Oh, was it now?
After the shock that had been received, the French army was still able to crawl to Moscow, but there, without any new efforts on the part of the Russian troops, it was doomed to perish, bleeding to death from the mortal wound received at Borodino.
Is this a quote?
Yeah.
From
You know.
War and Peace?
Yeah, we read it. We read it. Did we read it, or
I've
is it
never
yet
fucking
to
read
come?
that.
See, this is all very confusing.
I mean, to be fair, we have read thousands of pages.
That's true.
Has it been thousands? I don't know.
It's been thousand and
We've read 1,000
and a
pages.
half. Thousand demi. I don't know. You want to keep reading?
Sure. Do you need nachos?
What?
I don't know.
Nachos?
What? I might be getting a burrito. was asking.
Mm.
What?
What? Well, I'm gonna keep reading. You keep
Uh,
wondering.
I mean, I can read
Okay.
chapter 5. Carne as. At that very time, in circumstances even more important than retreating without a battle, namely the evacuation and burning of Moscow, Rostopchin, who is usually represented as being the instigator of that event, oh wow, acted in an altogether different manner from Kutuzov.
After the Battle of Borodino, the abandonment and burning of Moscow was as inevitable as the retreat of the army beyond Moscow without fighting.
Every Russian might have predicted it, not by reasoning, but by the feeling implanted in each of us and in our fathers.
The same thing that took place in Moscow had happened in all the towns and villages on Russian soil, beginning with Smolensk, without the participation of Count Rostopchin and his broadsheets. The people awaited the enemy unconcernedly, did not riot or become excited or tear anyone to pieces, but faced its fate, feeling within it the strength to find what it should do at that most difficult moment. And as soon as the enemy drew near, the wealthy classes went away, abandoning their property, while the poorer remained and burned and destroyed what was left.
The consciousness that this would be so and would always be so was and is present in the heart of every Russian. And a consciousness of this and a foreboding that Moscow would be taken was present in the Russian Moscow Society in 1812. Those who had quitted Moscow already in July and at the beginning of August showed that they expected this. Those who went away, taking what they could and abandoning their houses and half their belongings, did so from the latent patriotism that which expresses itself not by phrases or by giving one's children to save the fatherland and similar unnatural exploits. Whoa. But unobtrusively, simply, organically, and therefore in the way that always produces the most powerful results. What?
You know, when you give away your children.
I know, but he's saying not like that.
Not like that.
But-
But you know.
But the most powerful results, unobtrusively, simply, organically.
Mm.
Does that always produce the most? Okay. Okay.
It is disgraceful to run away from danger. Only cowards are running away from Moscow, they were told. In his broadsheets, Rostopchin impressed on them that to leave Moscow was shameful. They were ashamed to be called cowards, ashamed to leave, but still they left, knowing it had to be done. Why did they go? It is impossible to suppose that Rostopchin had scared them by his accounts of horrors Napoleon had committed in conquered countries. The first people to go away were the rich, educated people who knew quite well that Vienna and Berlin had remained intact, and that during Napoleon's occupation the inhabitants had spent their time pleasantly in the company of the charming Frenchmen, whom the Russians, and especially the Russian ladies, then liked so much.
What? They went away because for Russians there could be no question as to whether things would go well or ill under French rule in Moscow. It was out of the question to be under French rule. It would be the worst thing that could happen. They went away even before the Battle of Borodino and still more rapidly after it, despite Rostopchin's calls to defend Moscow or the announcement of his intention to take the wonder-working icon of the Iberian Mother of God and go to fight, or of the balloons that were to destroy the French, and the balloons. And despite all the nonsense Rostopchin wrote in his broadsheets, they knew that it was for the army to fight, and that if it could not succeed, it would not do to take young ladies and house serfs to the Three Hills quarter of Moscow to fight Napoleon, and that they must go away, sorry as they were to abandon their property to destruction. They went away without thinking of the tremendous significance of that immense and wealthy city being given over to destruction. For a great city with wooden buildings was certain, when abandoned by its inhabitants, to be burned. They went away each on his own account, and yet it was only in consequence of their going away that the momentous event was accomplished that will always remain the greatest glory of the Russian people. The lady who, afraid of being stopped by Count Rostopchin's orders, had already in June moved with her Negroes and her women jesters. What a lady! Her women jesters?
Yeah, those were women jesters.
The women aren't funny.
That's true.
From Moscow to her Saratov estate with a vague
I think that's
consciousness.
the joke. I think like they're just there not being funny, and then people are like,
That's funny.
imagine a funny woman.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get some. With a vague consciousness that she was not Bonaparte's servant, was really, simply, and truly carrying out the great work which saved Russia. How the fuck was that? What saved Russia? But Count Rostopchin, who now taunted those who left Moscow and now had the government offices removed, now distributed quite useless weapons to the drunken rabble, now had processions displaying icons, and now forbade Father Augustine to remove icons or the relics of saints, now seized all the private carts in Moscow. Where does this guy get his fucking authority from? Okay. And on 136 of them removed the balloon that was being constructed by Lepich, now hinted that he would burn Moscow and related how he had set fire to his own house, now wrote a proclamation to the French solemnly upbraiding them for having destroyed his orphanage, now claimed the glory of having hinted that he would burn Moscow, and now repudiated the deed, now ordered Jesus, my God. Now ordered the people, what else did he do?
Yeah.
Now
I wanna
ordered the
hear it.
people to catch all spies and bring them to him, and now reproached them for doing so. Now expelled all the French residents from Moscow, and now allowed Madame Aubert Chaumet, the center of the whole French colony in Moscow, to remain, but ordered the venerable old postmaster Klyucharev to be arrested and exiled for no particular offense. Now assembled the people at the Three Hills to fight the French, and now, to get rid of them, handed over to them a man to be killed and himself drove away by a back gate. Now declared that he would not survive the fall of Moscow, and now wrote French verses in albums concerning his share in the affair. This man did not understand the meaning of what was happening, but merely wanted to do something himself that would astonish people, to perform some patriotically heroic feat, and like a child he made sport of the momentous and unavoidable event, the abandonment and burning of Moscow, and tried with his puny hand now to speed and now to stay the enormous popular tide that bore him along with it. What a dumbass.
Ugh. What?
Rostopchin is just the worst. He's always been the worst.
I barely know who he is.
He's the editor
Right. Oh yeah.
of the broadsheets.
Of the broadsheets.
Yeah.
Well, I think we know where we are.
Where are we?
I guess Moscow's being abandoned.
Is it? I can't quite
And all
tell.
the rich are leaving.
I see.
Of course. It's funny, but I always like imagine when a country's being taken over, I forget that like it can just be taken over. That it doesn't mean that the whole city is going to be destroyed.
Because people are usually rude.
No, I guess I just mean like, so like the French could take over Russia, and in a way, a lot could not change. They would just be under French rule now.
A lot would not change, you mean physically? Like
Yeah,
in the
physically.
city.
Yeah.
The physical city.
Yeah, I guess I just think of like a city being taken over and imagine like a siege. But of course, these aren't castles. Like they're just cities. There's no, like a city isn't built like a fortress.
But our house is.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
Moat after moat after moat. Should we pause?
Yeah. I think so. I think we're gonna get back to the characters.
Oh yeah?
Helena.
Ah! So she's not a character though.
That's true.
She's furniture.
That's true.
I guess we're getting back to the furniture.
Hateful furniture.
Stupid shit.
Yeah.
Thank you for persevering with us through the chaos that was us maybe doing something else to it.
We'll figure it out.
Will we? Yes, we will.
Yes, we will. People
Yes,
can do
we
this.
can.
We can figure this out.
Yes, we can.
Go have a great Friday.
TGI.
Okay.
Good night. My